for that. The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call the member for New England.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I like the member for Solomon. He's a good fella. And the last part of that speech was almost Churchillian, but it's also romantic and it's also wrong. Unfortunately, we don't get Australians onto farms. We get some. I've never picked fruit, I don't think, except in my mum's garden. My daughters have, St George, definitely. And I used to drop them off, and I tell you who's there. There's a few students, local students from the high school or back from university, which include my daughters. A couple of pensioners, but they're usually pretty good. They're kind of professional. They'd work with basically a bell on a timer on their hip, and they knew how long they had to wait to pick a box, and they knew the speed they wanted to go. So they're almost like professional pickers. And everybody else in that paddock and that field was from overseas.
I did say
from overseas. And I take the interjection. He said a visionary government. I want to get that on the record because that's what we need, and that's what we're going to deliver. So people just don't want to do the work. Now you go back into town in St George and yeah, it was terribly frustrating. There were people who were unemployed, but there was a job just out the road. In fact, there was a job all around them. One of the problems was it gets a little hot in St George around about, I don't know, from 9 o'clock on in summer. It's pretty hot. It gets up into the 40s and stays there. They knock off at 2 o'clock. They start at dark and they knock off at 2 o'clock and go home because it gets hard. And a lot of people just don't want to do it. So we've got to try and work our way around that. But what you find with horticulture is it becomes the basis of so many towns. It's the basis, a big part of St George. Even in Guyra, so St George, which is out southwest Queensland, it's a big part of that. Cunnamulla, they've got grapes out there. But if you go to the highest part of Australia, to Guyra, it's a big part of it there as well. Big part of the industry there. Huge tomato production at Guyra and glass houses. And then if you go down the hill, huge blueberry production in my electorate, and just across the way in the seats of Cowper and the seats of Page, where the Sikh community have been instrumental in the growth of the blueberry industry. Now, both sides seem to be saying we've got a problem, we need to fix it. Well, then let's fix it. And we can't fix it unless we get tens of thousands of backpackers into Australia because they're the ones who are going to pick the fruit. In fact, you even know at what stage, what country you want them from because you know the sort of job they do. At certain stages, there are certain people from certain country who get through it very quickly. At other stages, there are other people who do it a little bit more precisely and pedantically. But if they're not here, it doesn't get picked. And this is an issue not just for the farmers because there's no money on a tree and there's no money on the ground, there's money in a bank. And the only way you get into a bank is if you sell the product. The only way you can sell the product is if you pick the product. If we eat about 4 times as much as we export. So when you go to the shops and you go to the vegetable section, that's the Australian section, overwhelmingly. So if we don't pick it, don't think it's just helping backpackers or helping exports, it's not helping us because it's our food. It's our food that's rotting on the ground. And what's going to happen to the prices if you can't get these crops off? Where they're going to go up. And if the prices go up, who's that going to hurt? The person with a lesser amount of money than most of the people in this chamber. That's the person who it hurts. And it's a vital part of a dietary component is your fresh vegetables. So it's not just important for the Goulburn Valley or the Murrumbidgee or for Guyra or for Jubilee or for Tully, where the bananas are up north where the tropical fruits are, Atherton, Tableland. It's important for everybody who has dinner. So for everybody who has dinner, we've got to find a smarter way to get these people in. Now, I understand the issues of the conditions which people work under, and that's something that has to be monitored, and we've got to always make the case that they're being looked after. But we can't use that as a stalling factor that we are really at the critical stage here. If we do not get these people in, if we do not work around the bureaucracy and become a little bit adroit and adept in how we're doing this job, then this fruit is not going to get picked. It's going to absolutely kick in the stomach the economies of places like Shepparton. It's going to be a disaster for other places, whether it's from Atherton to Tully to Guyra to you name it, because horticulture is everywhere. So it seems like a job we can do, and I hope we've got the smarts now to go out and do it.